Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to everyone. Thank you, the Master and Ceremony, for the very kind introduction. Thank you for everyone for being here, to all the speakers, to Prof. Nunung Nurwati. Assalamualaikum, Prof. Nice meeting you. I can also see on my screen Dr. Harry Ubo also here. Thank you so much for participating in our collaboration, our very first international seminar on digital media, religion and society. And thank you so much also to the Dean and to our Deputy Dean, Dr. Kartini, and also our Head of Program, Dr. Norsima. Today I'm going to talk about a topic that is, I think, very timely. The title of my presentation is Shifting Narrative. I want to look at the global media coverage of the Gaza war that has still been going nowadays. The Palestinian-Israel conflict has been going on for almost a century, actually. It started in 1900 when Israel has entered Palestine illegally. The planning has started in early 1900. It's perhaps one of the clearest examples of the persistent injustice in our modern world. And yet, as we can see today, Israel seems to get away with it every time. And the world remains paralyzed, unable or unwilling to do anything or meaningful about it. And this paralysis is reflected not only in politics, but also in media discourse that shapes our understanding of the conflict. I've been doing this research on the discourse analysis of the BBC or the global work of Palestinian issues for quite some time now. And someone asked me, they said, Dr. Faizal, why you are still studying the global media coverage of the Palestinian-Israel conflict? Has it been done so many times? And basically, the result is always the same. And it is true indeed. It has been studied extensively. And that question had made me pause and think, because even after decades of research, something hasn't changed. The language of global media still leans toward legitimizing Israel action while questioning Palestinian sufferings. Even the BBC, I graduated from the UK, and I'm being educated by the British Broadcasting Centre on what journalism is all about. And I practiced journalism for quite a while. And I learned from the BBC, which is regarded as the torchbearer of journalistic objectivity and truth. Even the BBC has repeatedly been shown to prioritize the Israel voice. Meanwhile, Al Jazeera, often dismissed as pro-Muslim network and accused of siding with Palestinians. So what actually we can learn here, and why I want to look again at this. Let's start with what earlier scholars have told us. Greg Filio and Mike Berry, in their seminal works on More Bad News from Israel, it's a continuation of their work from Bad News from Israel, analyzed the BBC and ITV coverage on the 2008 and 2009 Gaza war. To all the students, when it comes to war in Palestine, it's been going on since, Israel has been created by UN illegally in 1948. And since then, there's a lot of war that's been happening. And from books by Filio and Berry, their conclusion was clear. The Israel explanation of the war was largely accepted, while Palestinian voices were either marginalized or cast as mere claims. Similarly, Leon Baco, my advisor when I was when I was studying for my PhD, and my very dear Professor Leon Baco found that the BBC stories routinely turn Israel statement into news, while CNN tend to echo Israel viewpoints and legitimize their action. Fast forward now, a recent study by Nuruddin and Aya Miladi, they examined the BBC and I-24 news coverage, Israeli news organizations, and found that the same patterns repeatedly. Both relied heavily on Israel's security frames. The Palestinian frame was virtually absent. And my recent research compared the BBC and Al Jazeera on the early phase of the war also found similarly of the stark difference between Al Jazeera and BBC. While Al Jazeera contextualized the attack by Hamas, the BBC tend to empathize with Israel. So why we want to revisit the discourse? The perception of Israel and Palestinian conflict today is not the same as it was before. Before the age of social media, the narrative surrounding Palestinian was shaped and constrained by the Western media institution, namely BBC, CNN, and others. And this outlet operate within the boundaries of Western ideological framework. And for decades, since 1948, people around the world may heard about the Israel-Palestinian conflict and what Israel has done to Palestinians, but they cannot basically see it. The violence and suffering of Palestinians were filtered, framed, and sanitized before reaching the global audience. The mainstream media shows fragment of truth, but never the full, unbearable weight that Palestinians faced. Then came the age of social media. The conflict became hyper-mediatized, and for the first time, the Palestinian story could bypass traditional gatekeepers. The Gaza war, which started on October 7, 2023, was perhaps the most digitally witnessed war in modern history. It began with Hamas launching an attack of Israel. After siege of occupation and bombardment, an act immediately became the pretext for Israel to retaliate and to territorially go into Palestine. And what was followed was catastrophic. Israel began destroying Gaza before our eyes. In the pre-social media era, Israel public relation machinery could conceal this attack, but not this time. Social media stripped away the veil, the bombing, the death, the displacement, unfolded live in front of our eyes. So does this visibility matter? Does the rise of digital publics and their online discourse change everything, particularly the global discourse? And this is the question that I would like to see. I'm particularly interested in how two of the world's most prominent and influential broadcasters, BBC and Al Jazeera, narrate this moment. Both are regarded in a different way as global reference points for journalism, the BBC representing the Western liberal tradition, and Al Jazeera representing the global South, the counter voice. Together, they provide the revealing lens on how journalism, objectivity, balance operate in times of war, and how even the most centrist media, BBC and Al Jazeera, can be regarded as the most centrist, may reproduce, resist, or entrench system of power. And I would like to revisit the question and see how the BBC and Al Jazeera frame the Gaza war in two key moments. First, the attack by Hamas on the 7th of October. A month later, when Israel bombardment reached its peaks. These two moments matter. On October 7, Hamas launched a massive attack, a very surprise and unprecedented attack, which I haven't seen for quite a long time. Such attack by Hamas, which killed more than 1,200 Israelis and took hostages. And after that, Israel retaliated, which was catastrophic, then again, also unprecedented. From my study of Israel and Palestinian conflict, I've never seen an attack which is that devastating for the Palestinians, which has killed, I think right now, like about 15,000 people, mostly women and children. And they were killed under the pretext or justification of eliminating Hamas. So I wanted to see, how did the two most influential broadcasters represent this contrasting moment? Would there be any shift in the narratives? So how am I going to do that? Let me briefly touch on critical discourse analysis. Critical discourse analysis is basically not just about words. It's about how language constructs power. Michel Foucault, who could be said as the father of discourse, reminded us that discourse is not merely a speech. It is a system of knowledge that decides who can speak, what can be said, and what counts as truth. It's a critical study. If I make it simple, the fact that we have a keynote speaker is part of discourse. Who coined the word keynote speaker? Who allowed who to speak on a key academic keynote speaker, that is a discourse that has been created in the academic discourse. So, I mean, if you want to apply discourse, it can be applied in a totally, in a lot of fields. There's a discourse in medical discourse, the educational discourse, and political discourse. And in this particular presentation, I will talk about media discourse. So, in media discourse, journalism is not simply a mirror of events. It is part of what Foucault said, a regime of truth. Through repetition, framing, and selective, the media tell us what we want to see. So, to understand the discourse of the media, particularly specifically on the BBC and Al Jazeera representation of Palestinian conflict, I'm going to look at the several aspects. First, the word choices, the sentence construction, the transitivity, the labeling, also the quotations and the references. And what the BBC showed us. Can I have the next slide? Okay, next. Okay, what the BBC showed us. I have analyzed almost about